Hello, everyone, and welcome back to JDD TV. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming, and I am joined by Manuel Veth. I'm very excited to have Manuel on. Haven't talked to you in a while, and today we're going to do a nice little Canada window recap. So, Manuel, I appreciate the time. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. I'm about to leave on my honeymoon tonight. So this is the last video I'm recording beforehand, and I'm excited for it. So let's dive right on in. And I just want to get your initial reaction to the US match. Now, Filippo was maybe going to join us. If he was, I was gonna throw the extension out to Adrian to see if we can get the Unsackable Pod reunion, but didn't quite happen. So Canada played the United States. They won 2-1. I thought it was a dominant performance. I thought it was pretty much exactly what Jesse would have wanted to see. And I want to begin with the press. What was your thoughts on that? Because right off the get-go, I don't know if it's just the United States not being up for it or Canada just wanting something to prove, but every single time the United States were trying to play it at the back, we were there, we were causing turnovers, and we were creating chances.
Yeah, I think that's classic Jesse Marsch football, isn't it? I thought Canada was excellent. I think they had a game plan, and I think they executed it exactly how Marsch envisioned it. And I think that when you look at the stats at halftime, what was it, 11-0 shots, right? The most shots the US had against them, I think, since the World Cup quarterfinal or round of 16. So to do it on American soil, and the US has that eternal home advantage whenever they play in this region, and that's something that we have to really keep in mind, right? Oftentimes Canada unfortunately does play on the road and has a significant disadvantage, and you couldn't see it at all in that game. And I think Marsch has really quickly put a stamp on this team, and I think that is really the thing that I think is very impressive. It's very seldom nowadays that in international football you see coaches come in and putting the handwriting on teams. There's very few teams. I mean, I watched the two Germany games, right? Obviously, and you can really tell that what Nagelsmann's vision is, and they almost play like a club team. And you can see the same with Canada. There's a coach here who has a long history in club football, and he's coaching this team like a club side, and they play like a club team, and they've been together. This group has been together for quite some time, right? So there's that familiarity, and I think that is something that maybe made them stand out a little bit more than their opponent, which really seemed in huge amount of disarray. I thought, the press was excellent, but they have the players for it, right? They have a lot of speed in the attack, so that really helps here. And Canada's strength have always been the attacking players. Even our defenders, Alphonso Davies, right? They're more attacking minded, and so that was never really a big issue to begin with. When you look back into the program, and I think that's also something that Marsch has identified, and rather than looking into maybe finding to fix the defense, which is something that's sooner or later he will have to do, and there will need to be more depth coming up the ranks. But rather than that, focusing on the strengths, and that game was the perfect example of that, I thought.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think when Jesse came into this, and I want to get your opinion as well, and we'll get to it in a little bit, but when Jesse was appointed, I thought it was going to be a match made in heaven, because I really think that what he wanted to do was directly in line with the player that we had. And I think the interesting thing is when you look at Copa America, when he didn't have a lot of time to put together what he wanted to do, there was a few growing pains, but you saw improvement throughout the tournament, and then we really just saw exactly, I think, what Jesse envisioned in this US game. And I kind of want to focus a little bit on the back four, like you mentioned, because he gave a huge opportunity to Bombito, to Cornelius at Copa America. They thrived. They now both all of a sudden take a big step. They're playing a top 5 league. But I think a player that's gone quietly under the radar is Alphonso Davies, because when he plays with the national team over the years, he was the guy. He was the player that was playing up at one of the winger positions. He was drifting in, playing as a 10. He's played as a striker from time to time. And I remember during World Cup qualifying when he had those injuries, all of a sudden people started asking, are we playing better without Davies? And there was a bit of a debate around that, because sometimes he got caught doing a little bit too much. I think Jesse Marsch putting him in the back four simplified his game. I mean, he plays as a left back at club level. He rounds out that back four. I don't think he puts himself in a position where he can't come back and make that recovery speed, but he also has the ability going forward. And I feel like I want to give him some love, because I feel like I haven't quite done it during Copa America, but I think he's been really good at left back. And the thing that really made me notice it as well was that block he had against Mexico late in the game. He celebrated like he scored a goal, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I think, and that's something I think I criticized during the Copa at one point on X, formerly known as Twitter, that he sometimes does a bit too much for this Canada team, taking every free kick, taking every corner kick, etc. Right, and he has the captaincy, and let's make no mistake, this is his team. He's the most famous player that this nation ever produced, maybe one of the most famous athletes this country ever produced, right? But at the same time, having the captaincy and taking over the leadership role also means that you have to sometimes delegate, and that's something that I think he forgets. And I thought there was a huge improvement in this window, as you said, right? Because he's given a role that he's familiar with. It's really difficult, I think, for these big stars when they go back to their respective national teams. There's very, very much similarity to David Alaba, right? His former Bayern teammate, and who had to play left back and center back for Bayern, but insisted on playing in midfield for Austria. And it was always a very difficult thing because you could tell that he didn't do it at the club level. And I think that is something that sometimes you forget. Yes, this player is enormously gifted. Alphonso Davies is incredibly gifted, especially on the CONCACAF level, right? There is no one like him right now. But at the same time, you have to remember that positionally, he is not playing any of those other roles for his club team. So there's a familiarity that is really important here. And you're doing the player a disservice if you're saying, oh yeah, you can just do whatever you want for the national team. It's like, unfortunately, that's not how it works. And, those who have followed Jesse Marsch, whether it's at Salzburg, his brief stint at Leipzig, where it was, pretty much a disaster. At Leeds, especially the time in Salzburg, he did give players clear roles. Right, even someone like Erling Haaland, who he had there, had a really clear and defined role. Karim Adeyemi is another one, right? So it's like you need to give these players positional awareness in order for them to succeed. And if these players are leaders or want to be leaders, they have to also be having the awareness that this is what is best for the team. To give you another example, I'm going to drift back to Germany. Joshua Kimmich is now playing right back there, right? Even though he's the captain, and he's accepted that role and is helping his country. That's the same thing Davies plays with Kimmich. Can I ask him, what's that like, right? Like, to accept a minor positional role in order to actually help your country more is something that's really important here. And I think I personally thought, like you, that he's really taking a step forward in that regard.
Absolutely, and as you know, when he went to Bayern and he's come out and said it, he's like, I thought I was brought in to be a winger.
Yeah.
I want to be a winger, but I think his best role for this team is at left back, and he's the captain, he's the leader. I don't think you'd be able to ask him to do that if he didn't respect Jesse Marsch, which I think is that Jesse came in, laid down what he wanted from Davies. Davies is buying in, and I like that you highlighted that, because a big criticism from Davies with the national team is that he should not be over set pieces. Yeah. Chouanier was over pretty much every set piece this window, so it kind of shows that whether it's Jesse, whether it's Davies, I don't know, but someone had a conversation there, and Davies is no longer.
He's not good at it. He's just not a good set piece taker.
He did it for so long, right? Yeah. Like it was always him. And I never understood why, and all of a sudden now he's not, and he's playing left back, and he's playing well.
I think there's this sense that players have when they are given the captaincy that they have to do everything, right? It's the same whenever you are given a leadership role in a company. The first instinct is right away, oh my God, I have to lead, I have to do everything, right? I'm now in charge of everything. And I mean, I can relate to that myself. The first time I was given promotion to a leadership role, I still did everything. And then I was told by someone above me, it's like, no, look, you actually got to you have to delegate now. These are no longer tasks that are your tasks. Part of being a leader is to delegate tasks to other people, to recognize what is your strength and what is other people's strengths. And like, as a leader, you're supposed to give away those tasks, right? And I think that is something that he had to learn. I mean, we forget how young he is still, right? He's still a relatively young player. And because of the magnitude of his his abilities, he is being pressed into this role early, and he's obviously also been with this program for quite some time now, so it makes sense. But I think that is something that as he matures and becomes older, that it's something that he has to learn. And I think where Jesse Marsch is perhaps more experienced as a coach and as a man manager than the people that were before him, right? To recognize, okay, well, I give you this leadership role, but also, look, I have worked with the likes of Erling Haaland. Like, I know what it is like to tell a person with a big character to say, look, no, you can't do this. So I think that is actually also something that really helps this program as well, that there is someone now in charge who has come in with a big international pedigree, right? That is the difference. I don't, when Jesse Marsch first came in, I'll be honest with you, I was a little worried about some of the things that had happened prior, because I remember covering him to a great extent in Salzburg, and then obviously also in Leipzig. And I thought he was a fantastic man manager at Salzburg, and that was obviously, that level of the league was obviously below him. But then he came to Leipzig, and that was obviously a step too far, right? He was not able to tactically find the adjustments needed to compete with one of the top sides in the Bundesliga. And the record speaks for itself. Like, this is not something that that I want to just throw shades at him. And I think he's probably the first to admit it himself. Then there was the time at Leeds, which I think, he often got criticized, maybe wrongfully, but also rightfully. We both follow the US media landscape and the defense mechanisms that are in place there whenever one of their own does badly, right? We have the same in Canada, let's be honest here. But I thought that at times he handled that position really well, and at times he didn't. And I thought that there were still some shortcomings coming into the Canada role. I thought he was a huge get, but I also thought, well, he's a huge get, but he has in the past also shown some deficiencies. And then there was that Netherlands game that I thought was a catastrophe, and I thought was a real test of what was going to come after. And obviously he went about and really showed to all of us that he has learned from the mistakes in the past, and that he's willing to adjust, and that he's able to teach his players a plan B. And I thought that's something that I think has been really impressive about this Jesse Marsch era, that we were all excited about him coming in, but I think some of us who have followed his had also had their doubts, and he has so far kind of proven the doubters, including myself, wrong.
Absolutely. I think he hasn't really put in a wrong foot. I mean, he came in right before Copa America. He had a lot to prove in a short amount of time, and now he kind of gets a little bit more time to focus on what he wants.
That Netherlands game could have gone really bad.
It could have. And then he followed up with a few tweaks against France, and all of a sudden, I remember being worried. I'm like, oh no, what did we get ourselves into? And all of a sudden, the next game, he makes just these tweaks, as any good manager could. It was his first game. We gave him some credit. But let's switch gears now from the US to the Mexico game, because he obviously had to switch his tactical plan a little bit. There was some rotation. That's two friendlies. He kind of expected. But Manuel, this game was very different than the US game. I noticed, at least right off the bat, we heavily missed Jonathan David. I don't know how big of a difference he truly would have made, just the way that the Mexico team was playing. But you have to imagine when Jesse's asking for this high intensity, this press. I think Jonathan David, and I've said it many times, is one of the best pressing strikers in world football, and he is a blessing for Jesse Marsch in the way that he wants to play. Without him, it was Kyle Larin and Jonathan Osorio leading the press, and I just didn't think it looked the same way. Plus the choppiness. There was over 40 fouls in this game.
Yeah,
it was a tough watch. It was an ugly watch. What did you make of it? Do you think it's a decent result, considering it is Mexico, it is away, and we did get a 0-0 game?
I mean, you're saying choppiness. I have the stats right in front of me.
Let's see it.
So Mexico had 218 passes, and they completed just 70%. And Canada had just 193 passes and completed 69%.
Oh, man.
Usually at this level, we're talking 300 passes plus and a completion rate of about 80%. And the fouls committed were 24-19 in Mexico's favor. I saw a stat somewhere. It was at some point in the first half. I can't remember who tweeted this out, so I really apologize for not saying who it was. But I think Mexico started the first 15 minutes or so with 11 fouls. So that tells you everything you need to know about this game. I thought Mexico played. There's been this history between these two countries that Canada really took the physicality. I think we all, and I think that's where Filippo's root Canadians comes from, right? We approach a lot of these games like we're playing hockey, right? We're this really nice and kind nation, but we're also this country that when we do compete in sports, we right away try to put our stamp on it and not be very nice. And I think there's been a reputation that this Canada team has developed in CONCACAF as being very physical. We have a lot of physical players. We have a lot of fast players, and there's been, especially under John Hurtman, the previous era, there's been a lot of that destructiveness in the game. And I had the sense that Mexico were like, well, this is how they're going to play. We're going to do the exact same thing, right? We're going to just turn this into a CONCACAF brawl like we're playing Panama or Honduras or any of those other countries. It's kind of interesting how Canada has, in recent years, really embraced that CONCACAF mentality and took it to another level, and actually to a level maybe that the US has still kind of struggled to find. And I think that's also why we have done so much better than they have, right? Because there is an enormous amount of physicality in this region, and the US is still trying at some times to create this false sense of adversity. Of course, we remember the cold games and all that kind of stuff, but they don't really embrace this. Whereas Canada, when they find an opponent like Mexico that wants to play physical, will just do it right back. It's just that show, and then it turns into this ugly brawl of a football match. Look, at the end of the day, it's a friendly, it's a 0-0 draw. The fact that this country has embraced the way the region plays football and can sort of kind of turn. Look, we play the US, so we have to play them in a high press. We have to play good football. We have to be active. We have to hurt them. Oh, there's Mexico. They want to play physical football. Okay, fine, we can do that too. That is being pragmatic, and I think that is really the one takeaway I have from this game, that there is a sense of pragmatism. And again, Jesse Marsch showing that he has a team at hand that can shift to the adversity it's facing. I would have liked to see Canada win this game, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's a friendly. You got one win and you got one draw against the two other biggest teams in this region on away. That's really important here too. Away means a lot more here than it does in Europe. I think that's a really positive result. Maybe try to play a bit more football next time.
Like I said, I saw a lot on X last night, being like, man, is it just me for wanting to watch a real football match, not whatever the heck this is?
Rugby.
I saw a rugby match. I definitely saw a few this is pure CONCACAF, or CONCACAF at its finest. I thought it was funny that Nico Seeger, give him a shout out for coming on for his Canadian debut, but his first touch, it was just a little bit of everything. The ball was coming down, he was running, he did a nice little Ronaldo chop. He made a nice sneaky pass. I think he split two players to successfully get it, and then he was just knocked to the ground, just body checked right down. I'm like, there's CONCACAF, and I thought Ali Ahmed.
In fairness, he plays in the Balkans, so he should be used to it.
He should be used to it. It didn't seem to bother him. He got a yellow card. He had grit. I think this was a nice game for Richie Larea. Even if Johnson was available, I still feel like this is where Richie can shine, because he plays with that edge. He's got no problem going toe to toe with the Mexican players when they're acting like this. And I also just wanted to highlight Ali Ahmed, who I thought had a really good window in general. But the amount of times I saw him getting kicked to the ground, thrown to the ground, he was the most dangerous player for Canada in that Mexico game by far. It looked like if we were going to create anything, it would come from Ali Ahmed. He did put in that ball for Kyle Larin. That was a big time save. I don't really look at Larin being like, he probably should have done better. He got up well. He tried to put it in the corner. It was a wonderful save. But what were your thoughts on Ali Ahmed? Obviously, you watch him a lot with the Whitecaps. Mm-hmm. I just thought he had a great window. And I want to ask you this question before we end off the video here. Do you think when Tajon Buchanan is back and healthy, do you think that Ali Ahmed can push him for that starting role on the right-hand side?
Well, Ali can also play in midfield, right?
He can, yeah.
That's where he was mostly here. And he plays a very much box-to-box midfielder kind of role for the Whitecaps. That's Vani Satini has pointed out many times that he thinks he's the Whitecaps' most important player in that regard, and that that the fact that he can sort of be so crucial in transition moments, that he has this ability to really carry the ball and be very good one-on-one and find these spaces. His work rate is exceptional. He's a very much a late bloomer, right? And in the fact that he was 21, 22 when he finally did break through into the first team at the Whitecaps. Very slight when he first came up. Had that moment in the Canadian Championship where he was flattened, right? When he was here on the island, on Vancouver Island, playing against Pacific FC, and suffered a really an injury that could have been really bad, right? And turned out to be quote unquote okay. But he has tremendous assets, and I think that he is the sort of player that you can put in central midfield as well. So, you know, his versatility is a really big asset for him. And as a player, I think his ability to recover from that big injury that he suffered against the Pacific FC in the Canadian Championship a while back, it shows you that he has the ability to play in these physical games, right? And that he knows how to handle these physical games as well. And yeah, in that regard, I think the sky is the limit in many ways, I think, for Ali. And I think too that he is, like so many others in this Canada national team, has come to the game at the professional level a little later than what would be the case in Europe. And that's because of our development system and the fact that we don't have enough clubs in this country still, even with the Canadian Premier League, right? I did this story on Moise Bombito, for example, on his path to through USL League 2, you know, the semi-amateur league. And Schaffenburg is another one who played there, for example, right? We don't have enough avenues still to give these players the development path early enough, right? If he was in Europe, he'd probably be a professional at 17, 18 and be much longer on this, right? So, and in that regard, I think he kind of embodies the story of the late bloomer, and who has to work harder than most others because it doesn't come to him as naturally as it does to many of these super talents, like an Alphonso Davies, for example, right, or Jonathan David. But yeah, he works incredibly hard, and I think he will always find a role for Ali Ahmed in this national team.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was asking the chat and a lot of people on X as well if Ali Ahmed could push Tajon Buchanan. A lot of people think that he could, and if not, there's always maybe a place for him in the midfield down the line. But Manuel, that's all the time we have for today. I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Absolutely, we'll do this very soon again.